Welcome back to Let Us Spark, a podcast where we talk about anything that inspires us to think. I'm your host, Lynn. Hello friends, my conversation this week is with Cecilia. Cecilia is a master student studying applied cultural analysis at Lund University in Sweden. She has a BA with a major in comparative literature and a minor in political science. Now she's aiming for a PhD in anthropology. Born in Sweden, she's not only fluent in English and Swedish, but also knows Japanese to an extent. She has experience working in a variety of fields, including marketing, care work, teaching, and professional acting. And she has been very active in the social movement, calling for actions on climate change, etc. As a part of Seeking Your Passion series, this episode, we touch on a few things. We talk about her academic work and cross-cultural experiences and the most valuable lessons she has learned along the way, as well as what makes her so passionate about getting involved in the climate change movement. All right. Hi, Cecilia. How are you?
Hello. I'm good.
Great. Thanks for joining my podcast. Actually, it's my pleasure to have you. So
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So today we are going to start with talking about your academic experience. Because Cecilia, like I introduced you before, you have a BA with a major in comparative literature and a minor in political science. So can you give us a clue as to what these two disciplines are actually about?
So comparative literature is, it's a lot less about literature than I thought, and a lot more about history than I thought. So it's kind of like imagine having a history course, but instead of learning about in this, in these years, this and this happened, you learn about it through books. So it's kind of like, okay, so in this and this era, these and these books were released, and then you have to read the books, and you're like, okay, so how does this connect to what happened during that era? So it's kind of like, it's kind of like history, but through books and through literature. And yeah.
How about
and political science? Well, yeah, political science. That's basically like how does politics work? It's not so much like political issues per se, but more like how does politics work? Like what kind of different systems are there, and so on.
I see. So why did you choose these two subjects? When you're in uni.
Yeah, well, actually, I had a really hard time deciding what I wanted to do in university. So I walked around for like ages, and I was like, because I was always stuck in this whole like, what will give me a job thought. So I was like, should I do this? Should I do that? Will that give me a job? I don't know. Will that give me a job? And then at one point, my husband said to me that, like, Cecilia, it doesn't matter if you attend something that will give you a job, because that is not what you want to do, right? So you have to do something that you want to do, otherwise you won't complete it. And if you won't complete it, then you might as well just not do it, because it won't matter. So yeah, and so then I found comparative literature, and I was like, this sounds like so much fun, and I was like, I'm gonna start studying it, and then I'm gonna until I figured out something that I want to do. So I'm just gonna study it for a little while, and then see what I want to do. And then I ended up getting a bachelor's in it. So
Got it. Actually, like we talked before, I think I'm quite surprised because it sounds like actually you are on a journey to find out what you are exactly like, what are you exactly interested in. But I think, I'm surprised because I always thought that before that between the West and China, due to the differences in the education system, students in the West might have a bad idea of like what they want to study at uni. So it wouldn't be like, for example, me. I'm graduating from high school on a test-based education system and choose a well-ranked uni, and I choose a well-ranked major at that uni. So, but I actually didn't know much about the major I was about to study at the time. So, yeah, it's hilarious. But as far as I know, Japan is also a country that employs a test-based education system, and you have been to Japan before, so you probably get an idea about the education over there. So, what do you think is the difference between Swedish and Japanese educational approach or philosophies behind this?
Yeah, so yeah, so I gotta be clear with like I've never studied at a Japanese
Mm,
university,
mm,
so I don't have like that much insight. But the insights I got was that there seems to be very much like um it's almost like an unspoken rule that
mm,
as soon as you finish high school, you go straight into university.
mm,
And then you stay there for like 4 years, I think it is, for a bachelor's. Um, and that's not the case in Sweden. In
mm,
Sweden, it's more like if when you graduate from high school, it's not uncommon to take a few years to like, I don't know, work a little, travel a
mm,
little, maybe reading some course that doesn't really have to do
mm,
like that won't really get you a degree, but it might be fun and so on.
mm,
And then when you have sort of figured out that this is what I want to do in life,
mm,
then you start studying. Um, so yeah,
mm,
so I think that in Sweden, like in Swedish universities, there are a lot more varied ages. I have the feeling, um, because some people they do go straight from high school into university, and they'll be like 18 when they start. But some people they work and work all their lives, and then they find out that wait a minute, I want to study this thing,
mm,
and then they end up in the same class as the 18-year-old, even though they're like 35. So
mm.
yeah.
Actually, I like this idea because when we don't know what you exactly want to do, actually we just try different stuff. Like you said, I think it is a good approach, to find out what's your passion, what you are interested in. Because actually, what you are saying about Japanese education there is quite similar as Chinese education here. We just, we go for the university after graduating from high school because we made a lot of efforts for uni, so we have to go for one. I think it's quite different, but I think um, it's really good approach and idea. Like you try something around, so you find out what you really want to do. That kind of stuff. It's really great. Okay, so we are talked about your undergraduate degree. How about your master degree? I mean, why did you choose applied cultural analysis for your MA?
um yeah. Yeah, I kind of ask myself that sometimes too, but
Go ahead.
no, but I was yeah, like when I was doing my bachelor's, I was still also kind of trying to figure out like what do I want to do after this? Like and I kind of figured out that I kind of want to study all my life. So that's when I sort of figured that maybe I should do like a PhD.
Hmm.
Um and possibly like pursue an academic career. And so I started looking around for different masters. A lot of them are like, either we prepare you for a work life or we prepare you for a life in academia. And this program was kind of like, it was sort of in the middle, because it was kind of like, it seemed a lot like, oh, this will get you out on the working market, this will get you a job. And then there was this like Q&A meet with some of the teachers, and I went there and I asked about the prospects of getting a PhD. And they were like, yeah, well, actually, this kind of surprised us, but we have a lot of people who get a PhD after this. So I kind of figured that, okay, so if I take this, like I was pretty sure back then that I wanted to do a PhD, but I was also sort of aware that, okay, when I have finished, like in 2 years, I might not want to do a PhD anymore. So I was kind of like, it's probably good for me to have sort of both of these doors open. Right. So that's why I picked this.
Oh, got it. So what exactly is applied cultural analysis about? I think my guest for the first episode of Seeking Your Passion series E has already shared some of her insights on this question, but I'd love to know what you think. So can you give us a few examples to illustrate this?
Yeah, so it's kind of like you use like anthropological and ethnological theories and methods, but rather than like reading about them and then going to class and hearing your teacher talk about them, you read about them and then you use them. So in our education, it's a lot of like, no, you have to conduct your own projects, you have to talk with your clients, you have to things like that, which is very, very useful. It's a new way for me of working with theory, but I think it's very useful and it's very fun. So yeah.
So okay, so I think our past experience have shaped who we are today. So I'd like to ask you, like, what impact do you think these 3 subjects you mentioned before have had on the way you think, the way you deal with people, etc. So in other words, like, what these 3 subjects have an impact on you?
You mean the subjects I've studied?
Study. I think the 3 subjects you have already mentioned before.
Yeah. Yeah, I think. I think
Sure.
like yeah.
Just say what
I
you
think
want to
like
say.
yeah. No, I mean I think both with comparative literature and with political science, like I have sort of learned that it's not the same outside of academia as it is inside of academia. That like reading a book is not the same thing as like learning about books. And reading about politics is not the same as learning about politics. Yeah, and with the master's program, I think what I have learned is like, I guess like how to approach people, how to use what I know in a more concrete way.
You also mentioned you are trying to pursue a PhD degree. So why did you want to apply to anthropology for your PhD?
I think anthropology is first of all, it's very much connected to my master's degree. because we are using like anthropological theory and a lot of anthropological methods. And also it's such a multifaceted subject. So it's kind of like I can do a lot of things within anthropology that are very different from each other. Yeah, I'm actually very interested in like video game studies, which you can do if you have like, yeah, if you have like an anthropological background, you can do that. So
all right, so since you mentioned the video game, so you I think in the bio you sent to me, you just mentioned you have, you are very close to doing education in programming, system development, or something else that could have worked at a video game company. So so why did you interested in video games, and what exactly happened here?
I mean, I think I always have like an interest in storytelling. Like since I was a kid, I used to read a lot of books, and I was always playing video games like since I was a kid. So I think it's the whole like storytelling part that speaks to me. And when I got older, I was kind of like, yeah, maybe I should do that. You know, maybe I should go for like a video game, uh, you know, video game developer. Maybe I should go down that path. And I did apply even, but then I withdrew my application, and then, and then this whole thing happened with like, oh, I'm gonna try study comparative literature for a little while, and just see what it's like, and then I ended up having a bachelor's degree in it, and then but yeah.
I
So I guess
see.
that's what happened.
I see, I see. Because actually, I have talked about the video game with Cecilia before, and actually, I found out the game I recommended you is called. I found out it's called Plague Inc. I mean,
Oh yeah,
yeah, Plague Inc. Actually,
yeah, that one.
yeah, it's a real-time strategic simulation video game. So your goal is to spread the virus you have calculated to the whole of human being. So
Yeah,
I think it's a really good video game. I think, even though it sounds very evil, because your goal is to bring about the extinction of the whole of humanity. But to be honest, I learned a lot about the medical knowledge of different virus and policies of many countries, etc., while playing this game. So I think for a good game, which is actually designed for a particular wide range of things, you will have to think about cultural, social, historical, and political aspects on it. So I think it's a really good area to study. So just go for it. I really look forward to your study and research about it. Okay, so
yeah.
great. And I think we talk back to your PhD. So what have you done to prepare for this? Like,
Yeah. So what I've done is that I have applied for a lot of different positions as like research assistant and so on, with very little luck. But but I've also actually partaken, not as an assistant, but as a research subject, sort of, in various like different research projects and so on. And that's because I think like one of the most important things when you want to do a PhD is to like, get contacts within the academic world so that people know who you are and that people know that you exist. I've also something I did was that I talked to my teacher and said like I want to do a PhD because like my teacher has done a PhD. So it's like I can just ask him like, how do you do it? What should you think about? How should you approach it? And he has also been you know, accepting PhD studies students and supervise them. So it's kind of like he had a lot of good, you know, tips on what I should do and what I should think about and so on. It's still very confusing to me how I should actually do it, but I guess that's part of the process as well.
Don't worry, you can do that. I really hope everything goes
Thank
well
you.
with your PhD application. Okay, so
Thank you.
we've talked about your academic experience, and actually, Cecilia, you have a great variety of work experience, including marketing, care work, teaching, and professional acting. So, which one do you enjoy most, and why?
I think that's a difficult thing to answer because like they have all been so different
Yes.
in different ways. Like I guess like I mean I guess people sort of would expect me to say that the acting stuff that was the most fun thing I've ever done, and it is very funny to do acting, but it's also very stressful and it doesn't pay well, and it's like very, you know, you get very like sort of exposed to the industry. There aren't a lot of you know, unions for people who work within the arts and so on. So there are ups and downs with everything. Working as a professional carer, that was very stressful in a lot of ways, but it was a very different kind of stress because it was always like, okay, I know that this job will, like, you know, I will always have this job. I will stay at this job. It won't go away, and I do have my rights, and I do have, you know, things like that. But the job in itself was very stressful sometimes.
Because since you did a lot of different work, so I think you must learn a lot of from different work experience. So what are they? What do you learn the most important thing from different work experience?
I don't know. Like, yeah, it's difficult to say because you learn difficult things, right? From difficult,
Exactly. Yeah.
you learn different things, I mean, from different places. So when it came to like the professional carer thing, that was a lot about like communication and actually like seeing for somebody's needs and, you know, staying like, you know, communicating with a person on their sort of um, on their level, sort of in a whole different way, because it's kind of like when I talk to you, it's kind of like it's pretty I can pretty quickly, you know, make like a small talk and a conversation about like everyday stuff. But if I had to be in your home all day and follow you in your every step, as I do when I work as a professional carer, then we need a whole other type of communication because we do a whole different kind of thing, right? And when it comes to marketing, I also learned communication skills, but that was yet another way of communicating because that was like, okay, I gotta sell this right now. I gotta pitch it in like 10 seconds. And I gotta, you know, I don't need to know the people beforehand. I just need to pitch in the stuff that I'm selling. So yeah, that was different.
I see. So, do you think there should be a definite connection between the, subject you study at uni and the industry you eventually choose to pursue? Or would you think that you would feel a bit of, sorry, because after all, spend a lot of time studying a subject. Just think of all the days you stay up late in the library working on your papers. So I mean, yeah, we spend lots of time and effort, made a lot of efforts on this. But now you are working in a position that is not related to what you learn in uni. So how do you think about it?
I think it's good to have both things, sort of, because it's kind of like for some people, they are determined that like this is what I want to do in life. For me, like a few years ago, I was thinking I'm going to want to work with video game development. I'm going to want to do that my whole life. And then I was kind of like, but is that really what I want to do, my whole life? Or is it something that I feel like this would be cool to do right now, but in like 15 years, I might be so bored with it that I want to do something else. And that's why I decided to do something more like general, and study something more general, which was like, okay, this can lead to a job, but I don't really know what kind of job and so on. So I think for some people, it's very clear what they want to do. For others, it's not as clear. So I think it's good to have both options available.
I see. Actually, I totally agree what you said, because for me, take example, actually, when I went to the university in my undergraduate degree, actually I chose material chemistry. And although I told people just, I really hate it. But actually at the moment after I graduated from high school, actually I kind of like chemistry, because, I got a lot of inspiration from my chemistry teacher. So I actually like the science and like chemistry, So, but after 4 years of studying, material chemistry, I found out actually it's not I want to do. I think that's because I'm growing up. I just found out I've changed, and I found something else I like. So I changed my major to the journalism. So yeah, I think this happened. So basically, and it's hard to tell people, like, you have to figure out what you like right now, because people change all the time. So I think you make a brilliant idea here, and yeah, I totally agree with you. So
Thank you.
so what's your strategy for a career plan? Do we have one?
I don't have one.
But you definitely have like some kind of strategy for plan, Just share with us.
I mean, yeah, like it's kind of like at this point, I want to do a PhD. Like that's my goal from now. But I'm always like, because I'm like, I've tried to be like, it's the same thing about the video game developer thing. That was something that I thought I really want to do this, but then I thought, do I want to do this in like 15 years? And I was like, maybe not. And that's sort of like when I figured that out, I was like, maybe that's an approach I should have. So for now, it's kind of like when I started university, I was pretty sure that, okay, I think I want to do like an academic career. I think I want to pursue that. But I was also kind of like, but we'll see in a year, And then next year I was like, I still want to do an academic career, but we'll see in a year, And right now I'm at the point where I'm like, I want to do a PhD, but we'll see after I do the PhD if I still want to do an academic career, or if I want to go do something else, So I think my number one tip is to be like, think about what you want to do right now, and then think, will I want to do this in like 20 years? And if the answer is I don't know, but you want to do it now, do it, and then see next year, do I still want to do this? If the answer is yes, go for it. If the answer is no, find something else.
Okay, so nice strategy. And so we talk about your strategy for a plan, and now I think I want to ask you another stuff, something like time management, because I found out you like to play music. You play a lot of instruments, including piano, guitar, and cello, and you write songs, and you are playing in the symphonic orchestra. You've also been engaged in a women's choir in Lund, I think, and enjoying Lund Students Theatre. In addition, you participate in some volunteer work. So it seems you really have very wonderfully varied and colorful life. So how do you balance all of stuff, like your life, your study, and your work?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I don't balance it.
You should know.
It's all chaos. No, but yeah. I mean, I think it's important to sort of find where your limits are, and to sort of schedule in. Like, if you have very little to do, you don't have to schedule in like free time where you don't do anything. But I think a lot of people disregard the importance of actually scheduling in time in your life where you do nothing, where you are just being very unproductive. So that's something that I try to do. Like, I schedule in, it doesn't have to be long, but like, 1 week, like 1 evening in a week, I want to just sit by myself and just do nothing,
I see. So
I think that's important to keep.
Will you follow kind of like to-do list or something like plannings on your calendar, something like that?
Yeah, I do. I try to plan as much as possible and to keep track on what I do. Yeah, I also try to set up like some goals sometimes, because sometimes you just do things just because you have to do them, and it doesn't lead anywhere. So that's why I try to set up goals instead.
All right, great. And so let's move to the biggest part of this conversation, climate change. Because when I was doing research for this episode earlier, I found that activity takes up about like 80% of your Facebook. So you must be taking this very seriously. And that is,
I am.
yeah, that is since May 2019, I think you have been participating in climate change movement every Friday outside Moama City Hall. I think it's called Fridays for Future Moama. So what is it about?
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about the Fridays for Future Moama?
So the Fridays for Future movement, it's not just in Malmö, but it's like worldwide.
Oh, okay.
It started in Stockholm. Yeah, it started in Stockholm in 2018 with it was a Swedish girl who decided to strike from school, so she didn't go to school. And she's doing that still, and more people have joined her. So like, it started with people like school kids striking from school, but then it sort of expanded, and now everyone are welcome, no matter how old you are, or if you're still in school, or if you're not in school, and so on. And the point is to sort of show the world that not enough is being done. That it's sort of like, for a lot of school kids today, they feel like, why should I go to school when my future, like when I don't have a future anyways? And that's like a very powerful message. And yeah, I support that message. So yeah, but it started in Stockholm in 2018. But now it's like open for everyone in all the countries. And yeah, I think we have strikes in every continent. in the world, actually, right now. So, yeah.
I see. So, what kind of activities do you have to, advocate for concern and solutions to climate change issues, etc.?
I think that the most important thing to do right now is political activity, like political pressure, putting political pressure on world leaders and so on. Because if we look at it, we already have all the solutions, right, for creating a sustainable and carbon neutral society. The only thing is that we aren't implementing them. We are implementing them, but we aren't implementing them fast enough. It's going way too slow. And the only thing that can change this is political incitement from the people. Because politicians won't come in and say, like, we're gonna subsidize, we're gonna stop all fossil fuel driven things right now. Politicians are not going to say that unless the people say, we demand you stop all the fossil fuel driven things right now. So I think the most important thing to do is to put political pressure on world leaders.
Got it. So why does all of the stuff matters to you?
I think, yeah, to me, like, I joined the movement because I was kind of the belief that, like, either it's not that bad or that, like, it is quite bad, but we can't fix it anyways, I can't do anything, But then I learned that, no, actually, all the solutions are there. We can fix this. It's not, like, impossible. We can fix it. But it's not happening because we don't have enough, like, the politicians don't have enough incitement for it to happen. And the incitement comes from people like me. So that's why I started to sort of engage in this, because I felt like I have to do something, And then when I started engaging, I actually, like, I found a lot of nice, cool people that I still have contact with, and it's become, like, a great area of, like, meeting, talking to other people, talking about, like, climate change and talking about, like, other political issues and so on. So it's also kind of fun.
Got it. So surely, actually, I think you are doing something that is particularly meaningful for the protection of the environment. And I had that in December 2020 through your efforts and protests. You succeeded in getting Sweden's largest company, Prim, to decide to withdraw its controversial application to expand the oil refinery in Lusacy. So well done. I really appreciate you all. So I think you deserve to be more widely known, and more of us should join you in doing our bits to combat climate change.
I think so too.
Yeah. So that's why I'm trying to say here, what I'm trying to point out here. But of course, as you say, it's not easy. So what do you think is the biggest challenge facing climate change at the moment?
I think actually, maybe this is like the social scientist in me speaking, but I think the biggest challenge today is disinformation. Because climate change is not a simple problem. It is a very complex problem. And it is also a problem which a lot of different actors have different incitements in either stopping climate change or fueling climate change. So a lot of fossil fuel companies, for example, they have very successfully created a lot of narratives around climate change, saying things like, it's not that bad, or saying, like, well, it is that bad, but humans can't, like, humans aren't the reason. Or even saying things like, it's gone too far already, we can't stop it. This is a very common narrative today. I see lots of people who think there's no use protesting because we can't stop it. And this is not true. There are some things that we cannot stop. There are some things that are gone forever. But there are also a lot of things that aren't. And it's not a question of like, we are either doomed or we are not doomed. It's a question of like, what parts of our climate is already doomed and what parts can we still save? So I think disinformation is one of the biggest challenges, I think.
I see. So
because it stops people from protesting.
Got it. So how do you think we should tackle this issue? Like, because you mentioned maybe...
yeah, well...
Go ahead.
Yeah, go on. I mean, it's a difficult thing to answer, right? Because I'm not a climate scientist, so I don't really know how exactly this should be.
But you are very involved in these kinds of movements, so I think you kind of get a better knowledge than the others who, they just don't realize this kind of issue. So I think you can give them some, your thoughts
I think
on
the
that.
best... yeah. I think the best thing to tackle this is to sort of... Well, first of all, we need to speak clear about the fact that this is not a clear issue. There is no, like, ultimate, tipping point where everything will go to hell no matter what we do. There is no, like... I mean, it's like I said, some things are already lost forever. Other things are not lost forever. And this is the whole thing, like, people love asking scientists, like, is it too late? Are we doomed? And scientists always say that, well, that depends on what you mean with doomed. Because some things won't go back to the way they used to be. But that doesn't mean that we're doomed, And for some people, like, a climate disaster is already the reality, sadly. Some people are already suffering greatly from climate change related issues in the world. And for them, it's already, they're already doomed, sort of. So this is not a black and white issue. So I think the best way of tackling this is to be, like, very, very clear and stop talking in, like, scenarios of, like, we are all doomed, or we are all saved, or we can do something about it, or we can't do something about it. Because it's not that simple. So, yeah.
Got it. So I just love the message you put out there. So for a global challenge such as, for example, like the climate change, I think we really need all of people's efforts. We really need, come together and work this out. So I think it's really important to make everybody getting involved, because actually it's a global challenge for everyone. So I think everybody should really get involved in this kind of stuff. So you are great.
Yeah.
And so
thank you.
What do you think are the impacts of the COVID-19 on global environment?
Yeah. So that, I think that's also something that is very, like, local in a way. Like, for me, who lived in Sweden and, like, in most of Europe and most of the Western world, I think, since people stayed indoors all the time, emissions went drastically down. And that was, I don't know, good for the environment, at least temporarily. But I think the best thing about the COVID-19, or like best thing about the COVID-19 impact is that it proved to the world that we can do enormous global changes in a very short time. That is entirely possible. And so I think because what we need to do to solve climate change is to do things that we've never done before in the history of mankind. And what we did during the COVID-19 pandemic was that we put everyone in the world in a lockdown, basically. And that is also something that we've never done before in the history of mankind. So it sort of proves that just because we've never done it before doesn't mean that it's impossible. So that's something that could be good. However, the COVID-19 pandemic turned out to be in many countries like a democratic problem, which made it difficult for people to protest. So of course, there wasn't only good things about the COVID-19 pandemic. There were, in fact, a lot of bad things.
I see.
The COVID-19 pandemic was like 90% bad things. That's what I want to be clear about that.
I see.
Yeah.
I get it. But I'm want to ask this question because actually I watched a documentary. I think it is filmed by BBC or something like that. Basically, they just they documented like since 2020 when the first outbreak in Wuhan, and after that they keep documenting how the lockdowns and all of kind of restrict policies, they just keep the people. I think somehow it does like cut down a lot of humans activities. So that means somehow they give the environment a little bit take a break, something like that. So actually, according to the documentary, I think from 2020 to the 2021, for a year of pandemic, actually our environment is getting a little bit better than before. So yeah, I know, I totally agree with you, like pandemic is like 90% bad, but somehow it did it's very it's sometimes it make me think very sad because it can make us to see clearly like what our human beings activities made such a huge impact on the environment. Once we stop, environment is getting better. So it's so hilarious. So we really have to think about it and what is wrong we've done, what we have done to our earth, something like that. So I think it's really it's something that we really have to think about it. Go ahead.
It's quite scary when you it's quite scary when you think about it, how like one species can make such huge changes to the planet and to the environment.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's also kind of like because the emissions in 2020 the emissions actually lowered enough. Like if we want to stay on hold with the Paris Agreement, we need to lower our emissions that much every year. So, and that it's very easy to go into this thought of like, oh my God, do we have to live in lockdown for the rest of our lives? And I don't believe that, I don't believe we have to. But we believe to do something on that scale, it sort of gives like, it sort of becomes like a good counterpoint of like on what scale we need to act. Because a lot of the times I hear things like, oh, but we do things for the environment because, we sort our trash nowadays and so on. And it's kind of like, no, but that's not enough, So, yeah.
Yes, yes. So anyway, I think a global challenge like climate change requires global cooperation, I think. So basically, everyone just have to, make an action to get involved in this. That's the main point, I think. All right, so we talk about the climate change. Let's move on to the culture difference because like I mentioned before, you have been to Japan before. So how many years have been there?
1.5 years in total.
Oh, so why Japan?
I yeah, why Japan? I don't really know. Um, no, but it's yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, when I finished high school, I was like, I don't really know what to do. I don't really know what,
Mm-mm.
and I was kind of like, you know, I saw this. I was at this like meeting with a like travel agency who worked with like getting people, like young people, to move to other countries and so on, and specifically Japan
Mm.
was this travel agency's like specialty.
Mm.
And so I was like, well, I don't really have anything to do right now. I don't really know where I want to go in life. So I could sit in my mother's basement. My mother doesn't have a basement, but like you get the idea. And figure out what I want to do, or I could go to Japan and have fun
Mm.
and figure out what I want to do.
Mm.
So I went to Japan. I stayed there for 6 months, which was initially like the plan.
Mm.
Um, but after about 5 months, I I found a guy
Ah,
who wanted to stay there. Yeah.
okay.
And he was going to stay there for 2 years. So I couldn't renew my visa because it was too late for me to do so.
Mm.
But I thought, okay, if he's gonna stay here, I don't want to do like a long distance thing for 1.5 years. So after 6 months, I went back again and stayed for a year.
Mm.
So yeah.
I see. So, do you still remember, like, what was the biggest culture shock you found when you first arrived there?
Like I don't know. There was
Mm.
there were just so many cultural shocks, and like, yeah, no, that is difficult. It's
Don't worry, take your time. I think because actually I like Japanese culture as well, but I have never been there, and actually I got a plan to have a short trip to there in 2020,
oh
but unfortunately the pandemic, everything's coming wrong,
yeah,
so I
everything.
have to cancel it. But I think Japan just gave me an impression, just give me an image of like they are super polite because I have one of my classmates when I was in the UK, and she's so polite, and sometimes I get a little bit, I think I'm kind of rude, but actually I just behave normally, but she make
Yeah,
me think I'm rude. So I
yeah,
think
yeah,
that's the first impression of Japanese. They gave me this kind of image of them. And I think, yeah, I'll tell you a very interesting story. Actually, we went to a supermarket together, and I got a lot of shopping bags. So she asked maybe she can help me to help some. So I give it to her, and because it's quite a long way, it's really far away from our dormitory. So we just held the bags all the way, and when we wait for the tram, because we have to take the tram to go back, I just saw her just keep holding the bags, all the time. So I just asked
yeah,
her, so maybe you can, put it on the ground. It's okay. This is just a bag. And she said, don't worry, I can keep it, holding for you. It makes me
yeah,
so sorry, but I think
Oh,
Yeah, they're
yeah.
just very polite and very helpful.
Yeah, no, that's actually true. That
Mm.
a lot of the times, like when I first came to Japan and I didn't speak Japanese,
Mm.
and I couldn't find my way anywhere because all the signs are in Japanese and stuff. And I was like, where do I go? And la la la. And so whenever I asked people, and I thought that was pretty like that would not have happened in Sweden.
Mm.
When I asked people like, do you know the way to this and this place? And when they figured out that I don't speak Japanese, they would be like, no, we'll walk with you there. So they walked with me the
Oh,
entire way to the place, which was like that was pretty fantastic,
yeah.
just because they recognized that I didn't understand the language.
Ah.
Um, so that's yeah.
Yeah, they're always,
I
behave
wish
so nice and they just show up
yeah.
and give you support and help. That's amazing. How about food? Did you get used to eat all of kind of Japanese food?
I mean, yeah, I like Japanese food.
Oh,
I really
cool.
do.
Cool, cool.
They have like I'm a vegetarian and
Ah,
I've been so since I was a teenager.
mm,
And there are a lot of Japanese foods that are vegetarian-ish. A lot of it has fish, but
mm,
you know. But what I realized was that at least when I moved there the first time, I think it's a bit different now, because this was like 7 years ago. So
mm.
um, but when when I moved there the first time, like something that struck me was that the concept of being a vegetarian didn't really, it didn't really exist. It was a bit
Ah,
weird.
mm,
It was kind of like when I said that I don't eat meat, they were
mm.
like, "Are you allergic?" Or like, "Is it because of religion?" Or
Ah,
like, and it wasn't uncommon that you
mm,
got like you asked for something vegetarian at a restaurant, and then they came and they gave you something with meat in it, and
mm.
they were like, "But it's only a little bit of meat." so
Oh,
so it should be fine. um but yeah.
mm.
um so that's also a cultural shock, yeah.
When I was in uni, it's my first time to hear of this word like vegetarian, and
Oh,
yeah, actually I tried to be one, but
did
unfortunately,
it work?
no. I'm sorry. No, because I tried it
Yeah.
like for a month, and it's very, I take it very serious. I checked
Yeah.
online like how to be a proper vegetarian and what kind of food you can't eat, what kind of food you can
Yeah.
eat. I take it very serious, but some unfortunately, I just end up with like crazy about thinking about meat.
Yeah.
So I'm so sorry. I can't be a vegetarian because I
No.
think maybe because I used a very bad strategy. So would you
Yeah.
please just give some tips for maybe a starter who's want to be a vegetarian? Because for me it's so,
Yeah.
I tried it so hard, but unfortunately I can't do it. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I think like a mistake that a lot of people do is that they
Mm-hmm.
try to go like all in from the beginning. It's like all or nothing.
Mm.
So it's kind of like for me, um, it wasn't. Um, I started off by just eliminating meat. I was
Mm.
still, eating dairy and I was eating fish and I was eating everything.
Mm.
Um, and that was pretty easy for me to sustain. And then I stopped eating fish. And then I stopped eating dairy. And I went full vegan for a while, but then I thought that was a bit too extreme. So I went back to eating eggs and honey.
Mm.
So today I don't eat meat, I don't eat fish, I don't eat dairy.
Mm.
Um, but the other things I eat. And I think the issue is that people often try to go like they want to start off by being like 100% perfect. with it.
It's me. It's me.
Instead of like, yeah, it's you. Like, if you want to try and be vegetarian again, like, I would suggest that maybe you start by being like, just have like 1 day a week where you eat vegetarian, or like start off by like eliminating like red meat, for example, but you still eat like chicken and fish and so on, and dairy. And then, you know, when you feel like you've gotten used to that, you can start eliminating chicken if you want to do that, or fish if you want to do that. And, you know, take it step by step. And like, yeah, don't worry about being a perfect vegetarian, because that's still, you know, people are fighting over that so much in like the vegetarian communities and so on. So yeah.
All right, so
I think that's my biggest tip.
Another question I'd like to ask, because actually there are a lot of understandings of being a vegetarian, because some people may think it's not good for your health. So how do you react on this kind of misunderstanding?
I mean, I think it's perfectly, like, it is perfectly you know, doable to be in good health and be a vegetarian. It is also perfectly doable to be in bad health and be a vegetarian. Just like it is perfectly doable to, you know, be in bad health and eat meat. Like, a lot of people who eat meat, they have like horrible health issues.
You're right.
So it's not, yeah, so it's not so much about like, and it's the whole like all or nothing thinking again, of like, either you're a vegetarian and then you will have like bad health, or you're a meat eater and then you will have like good health. It's more about like, how do you actually live your life? Like, what do you eat? Do you eat too much? Do you eat too little? Do you eat varied enough? Do you just eat junk food? And so on. And there are also a lot of factors that don't have to do anything with food that impacts your health. So yeah, I'd say it's saying that it's unhealthy to be a vegetarian is like a very black and white statement.
Back to the cultural difference. So how do you think we should address the misunderstandings that arise from cultural differences?
Like, I would probably say to like try and embrace it rather than just avoiding it, because it's kind of like, I will admit that there was a lot of like awkward situations in Japan, because we didn't really, you know, because of the cultural crashes. But I also learned a lot. And there was also, you know, it was always an interesting topic of talking about like, how do you do this in Sweden? How do you do this in Japan? And so on and so on. So that's something that you can focus on, what you learn from them. And also, I can probably recommend that, like, if you really think that it's like the cultural differences are, you know, too bad and so on, try to focus on like the cultural similarities, because those exist as well. Like, we are all human, so we have similar you know, similar points, and we have like, yeah, we have similarities, even if it may not seem like it initially. So try to look for similarities if you think like the cultural differences are too much. So, because sometimes you can really feel like an alien.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So do you think Sweden is it a like inclusive country?
I think Sweden likes to think of itself as an inclusive country. It's unfortunately, the last few years we've seen a very unsettling rise in like racist ideas and so on, about like we cannot accept more refugees or more immigrants or so on, which is absolutely bullshit. We definitely can. And I think Sweden, yeah, I think it's a country that wants to see itself as inclusive, but in reality, not so much. We have a bit of problems with integrations and so on, so I don't think we're as inclusive as we think we are. I think actually, if you want to know how inclusive a country is, you should always start by asking like the immigrants, because they will know exactly how inclusive they feel and so on. That's something that I miss sometimes when I look at like all of these debates, because there's a load of debates in Sweden about like immigrants and like, should we have them here, should we not have them here, should we, and every time in these discussions it's always a bunch of like native Swedes who makes so many assumptions about like who these immigrants are, where they come from, how they live in society, and like, you know, just so many assumptions that I'm just like, how do you know that this is true? And instead, I think we should talk to the immigrants and say like, what are you lacking? You know, how are you doing here? Is it okay to live here? Would you rather live somewhere else? What do you think is good? What do you think is bad? And so on. So, yeah. Because I do think that a lot of countries have more issues with integration and inclusiveness than they want to admit.
Thanks, Cecilia, for sharing us this kind of your opinion, your thoughts on the cultural difference. And let's move on to the last session, quick Q&A. So basically, I will ask you like several questions. So please just answer me as soon as possible. Okay, great. So the first question, okay. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Can I answer this quickly? I don't know. Yeah, I would probably say like, don't worry so much about like, you know, like think more about what you want to do and not so much about what others want you to do. That's probably my advice.
Okay, cool. So second question, what's one tip for someone who's looking to study applied cultural analysis?
I'd say my greatest tip is that like, be sure that you are very comfortable with English, because the education is in English and it is difficult English. So be confident in your English abilities.
Nice. Okay, third question. Who would you say had the biggest influence on your career, probably, and why?
I don't know. I'm like, do I even have a career?
Or maybe someone like have the influence on you. You know, the process you are trying to build one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to do a PhD, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that the people who have the most influence there are probably the people at school. Or you know what? Actually, I think my friend who has done a PhD, I think she is the one who has influenced this the most. Because when I saw her dissertation, that's when I decided like, wow, this seems fun. I want to do this. So that's probably the person, yeah,
cool.
Who has influenced my career the most.
Cool. Okay, so the last but not least question. Recommend 3 books that influence your life. And please tell us why. It's hard.
Okay, I would say, yeah, it's hard. 3 books. I would say The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami. It was the first Haruki Murakami book I read, and he's now my favorite author because it was just so amazing how he built up that world and everything. So that one, second book, yeah, it was Dostoevsky.
Oh, okay.
Uh, I
Um,
think the Karamazov brothers.
okay.
Yeah, I really like that book.
Mm.
It was really good, and it was also a lot about like the whole yeah, no, I really like that book. I really recommend it.
All right.
And the third book,
Don't worry, just take your
yeah, I don't
time.
know, pass. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Cecilia, for sharing your story and experience. And you're such an inspiration. And I wish you all the best in your life, study, and work afterwards. And thank
Yeah.
you for being my guest. So I think
Well, thank you for having me.
it's my pleasure. Actually, that's it for this for today's show, and hopefully our conversation will not end. I hope we can talk more with you next time. So, all right, everybody, that's it for this episode. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a comment and share it with #LightSpark. Talk to you next time. Bye.
Thank you.